All right, I am pleased to be joined by returning guest Kyle Hoffman of the Pickle Podcast. How's it going, Kyle?
It's going awesome, JJ. Good to see your face again, man. And we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do. And thankfully, of course, it was last week when UFC 274 happened, but let's start talking about it, shall we? Of course, a lot of people know about your podcast already, but if you just want to talk a little bit about it before we start talking about UFC 274 and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I do the Pickle Podcast. It's been on hiatus for a short amount of time just because, a lot of stuff going on right now. But we're restarting up on YouTube here shortly. So I'm sure next time I'm on JJ, I'll have some more information for you, but it should be fun.
All right. Again, all the links will be down in the description, his website and all that stuff, his social media sites like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and of course, YouTube as well. So let's start off with the beginning bouts. Of course, Cerrone was supposed to fight in this one. That one didn't happen. So let's start with the Brown-Williams fight. Brown wins it. That wasn't the most entertaining fight, but at least we saw a little bit of spark, unlike the co-main event with Namajunas versus Esparza. But did you see anything out of the ordinary with the Brown and Williams fight?
I did not. It was for the most part what I expected from the fight. You had Chaos Williams coming out with a lot of big sweeping shots, putting a lot of power into him, and Randy Brown keeping his distance. A lot of people had Chaos Williams winning that fight just out of his sheer power alone, but I actually had Randy Brown winning that fight because he's got a longer reach. He's much better at movement around the perimeter than Chaos Williams, and it made for an exciting fight. For the fact that Randy Brown was able to control Chaos Williams and break him down. And, he actually reminds me a lot of Kevin Holland, actually, the way that he fights. So I think Randy Brown's going to be doing a lot better now that he has beat Chaos Williams. He's going to be more of a household name. So I'm excited for what's to come for Randy Brown.
All right, that was an interesting one too, and I think that was kind of a last second notice because the Cerrone fight was, canceled or whatever. But yeah, that was interesting. Again, there were some sparks there. It wasn't really anything that surprised me.
It actually got moved up from the preliminaries, I think, to the main card after the Cerrone fight got canceled. So
yeah, and I think those guys both kind of on the. Would you say they're both on the upside, or what would you say with both Brown and Williams with where their status is in the UFC? I guess I should say.
Chaos Williams needs to work on his movement a lot more and controlling his distance. He's just the type of fighter that needs to work on that type of thing. I mean, he's a big swinger. He's a banger. He's got to work on his distance a lot more if he's going to face people that are longer and have more reach than Randy Brown. Of course, I think he can definitely work on it. If he could work on his wrestling more often, he could be a lot more prepared for a fighter like Randy Brown, because even though Randy Brown is a decent grappler, I think that Chaos Williams, with his mass, if he would have put a lot more wrestling into his camp, he could have had a better chance at taking Randy Brown, getting some takedowns and stopping him from controlling that distance. So I see a lot of upside for both fighters. However, I think Randy Brown right now is really going to be on a run, and he showed me a lot of good things in that fight.
All right, we'll talk about it a little bit if we get some time here, but let's talk about the other fight with St. Preux versus Rua. That fight, again, didn't have a lot of spark either. I mean, it went the distance. I mean, what did you see from that fight? And I mean, were you really impressed with either fighter? Because it seemed kind of like at least Rua maybe was kind of trying to avoid some. I kind of saw it where St. Preux was trying to go after Rua and Rua kind of avoided it. Did you see the same thing, or what did you actually see?
Yeah, before that fight started, I knew that Rua is going to try to avoid the grappling of St. Preux because if obviously he did get Rua down, it would be a one-sided fight. But yeah, I expected this. I expected OSP to come out with the victory, even though Rua does have a lot of heart. I mean, let's be honest, both of these guys should be retired by now. So it was fun to watch, but I definitely think that OSP still has a little more in the tank than Rua at this point, obviously.
And what's next for St. Preux? He gets the win. What's next for St. Preux? And do you think retirement's next for Rua, as you just mentioned?
I think Rua should definitely retire. OSP could probably put in another fight or two, but then again, it's hard to tell who he might want to fight. It's hard telling. Maybe Dan Hooker or something. But I have Dan Hooker actually fighting someone else. In my prediction, but yeah, it's hard telling with OSP. Anytime with a veteran like that's been in so many fights, you definitely want to get, let's just cut that out. I just let's just cut that out, JJ. I didn't mean to say Dan Hooker there. That's my bad. But I'm not sure who OSP is in line for. It's really up to the odds makers to kind of put that fight together, but we'll see.
Okay, I'll put that out. All right, so let's get to our technically it's not necessarily a Trey main event, but it was more of the third best fight in this one between Chandler and Ferguson. Of course, the big the big talking point was Chandler getting the leg kick and knocking Ferguson out for a little while. Do you think he needs to retire, or because it doesn't seem like Ferguson has much in the tank now after that loss? Because I think it's his fourth straight, I believe, right?
It is his fourth straight. And it was really disappointing for Tony fans to see him come out in the first round like that and really look like his old self. Obviously, he didn't look 100% like his old self, but you could see flashes of his old self in the way that he was fighting. I think his new philosophy that he talked about pre-fight did him a lot of good as far as his outlook and his mindset going into the fights now. So you could see it at the end of the round where he gave Chandler a slap and he could feel it, and then the beginning of the second round starts and Chandler comes out and just lays a whopping kick right on the chin of Tony Ferguson. And if you watch the interview of Michael Chandler when he was talking to Ara Hawani, I believe, he was talking about how Chandler also went into that fight with a different mindset too, that he wasn't going to just fight, right? He was going to be patient in this fight and let his inner fighter come out instead of trying to bring it out. Because normally he's just swinging for the fences, trying to make things happen. In this fight, he realized that Tony Ferguson was a different kind of beast, and he realized that he had to take a different approach. And I think what Michael Chandler realized during that fight was that if he is patient and he lets the fighter come out, he can be one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC. He surprised himself with that kick. And I think that if he comes in with the same mindset like that, he could be amazing, right? He could be one of the greatest champions if he just keeps doing that. But then again, who's he going to face next? Because if he faces someone like the likes of Conor McGregor that he called out, how is he going to stand up mentally in the octagon, knowing that Chandler likes to be sporadic and can get off of his game plan? Conor McGregor would be the perfect person to try to get Chandler off of his game plan and make him try to bring the fighter out rather than let the fighter come out. And I think it's going to be interesting going forward with Chandler. If he continues to do that, it can be great, but he's got to keep it together. He's got to keep doing the same thing.
Well, let's start talking about Chandler now. I mean, you just mentioned McGregor, and I would love to see Chandler versus McGregor. That would definitely be a main bout right there. But and a lot of people, I think, have thought that, maybe McGregor gets a chance at Oliveira, and I don't think that should happen. I think Poirier should get a chance with Oliveira again, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes here. But do you think McGregor and Chandler will happen? And do you think it will actually happen? Or do you think they'll try to schedule Oliveira versus McGregor or Poirier versus McGregor? I guess Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor.
I really see a matchup between Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje again. I see another fight between those two. That's what I really see happening, because I really think Dana's going to try to make this McGregor fight happen. And to be honest, seeing what Tony Ferguson was still able to do to Michael Chandler in the first round there, I can see Conor McGregor having some type of chance against Michael Chandler. I mean, don't call me crazy, because Conor McGregor is a different type of fighter than Chandler would be used to, right? He's especially against like Oliveira. Oliveira kind of fights like McGregor, right? He controls distance. He only comes in and counter punches very, very well. They're both great counter punchers. So I can see a great fight between McGregor and Chandler if they were able to make that happen. And it's coming time to where Conor McGregor, you got to feed the beast at some point. He doesn't stay away for long.
Yeah, the thing too about McGregor is I don't think even right now, I think he's just getting over his injuries. I just don't think he would last very long with Oliveira. I mean, as of now, I think, in my opinion, he should fight Chandler one more time. Not one more time, but he should fight Chandler first and then fight Oliveira, or fight for the belt maybe. Because if you think about it right now, he's ranked 9th. So he still has a long way to go, really, before he can get that belt again. So in my opinion, I would love to see Chandler versus McGregor. I didn't think much about Oliveira, or not Oliveira, but Gaethje versus Poirier. But we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But if Chandler doesn't fight McGregor, who would be his next match? Next matchup?
I think it could be another Gaethje matchup, like he said. Rafael Dos Anjos has got 2 recent wins lately. He's still in the mix, and he's still a surging veteran. There's a couple people in the mix. Rafael Fiziev is on a 3-fight win streak, just beat Bobby Green and Brad Riddell. So there's a lot of guys around the 6 to 10 range, including Beneil Dariush, who recently just had to pull out of a fight, but he will be ready soon as well. So, I mean, I could see a fight between any of these contenders in the lightweight division. It's really one of the most exciting divisions to watch right now. And I also want to add that Charles Oliveira is pushing for probably going to be one of the greatest lightweights of all time if he keeps this up, because that performance that he put on was absolutely legendary.
Well, that leg kick is almost unstoppable, right? I mean, once he gets that leg kick, it's almost impossible. And especially in 2, he can go to the ground. You could clearly see when Gagey knocked him once, I think knocked him down twice, he didn't want to get to the ground because he knew he wouldn't last long. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But let's talk about that in a few minutes here. But let's go to the co-main event between Namajunas versus Esparza. Not a lot of sparks, but I did agree with the judges because, in my opinion, Namajunas was too laid back in that fight and kind of didn't start really going after her until the 4th or 5th round. And you saw Esparza was hit less than, or at least her face was not as battered as Namajunas. But did you agree with the judges and Esparza getting the win?
I did actually agree with the judges on Esparza getting the win because of the takedowns alone. There wasn't much scoring in the fight. Rose Namajunas did control the perimeter a lot better and had a few more significant strikes. But then again, as a champion coming in there, it does not look good to the judges when you aren't being aggressive. Carla Esparza went into the fight, and she even gave an interview about this. She went into the fight looking to be safe. She was looking for the takedown right away. So pretty much what happened was both fighters were trying to play it safe, and it just ended up lasting way too long. If I was in Rose Namajunas' corner after that 3rd round, I would have said, screw the title, go out there and fight, because I mean, you have your reputation on the line. It's not just the belt. I mean, it's your reputation on the line, your fans, and your paycheck is on the line. You can continue to stay champion, but it doesn't mean you're going to be popular. So I'm glad Carla Esparza won the fight. I think it'll put some fire under Rose now. I didn't like her attitude coming to that fight, and I honestly think that the way that she was jawing with Esparza during the fight and kind of showing attitude, I don't think it looked very good on the judges, to be honest, either. I think it might have swayed the judges a little bit on that one too.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about it too, like the way Namajunas, she was just way too laid back. I thought her face was a lot more battered than Esparza was. So I agreed with it just because of the way the fight happened. And again, Namajunas was just not very aggressive in that fight. Esparza now is the champion. I think it was the strawweight division. Who do you think she fights next? Because I think we were talking about before we started recording, but who do you think should be the next fight, or who should it be Esparza's next matchup?
Well, there is a strawweight fight coming up between it's Zhang Wei Li versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Those are 2 names that are very hard to say, but I think I got it right. But the winner of that, which I assume is going to be Zhang Wei Li, is probably going to fight Carla Esparza. The winner of that fight is going to fight Carla Esparza. I mean, it's just inevitable. Carla's probably going to take a little bit of a layoff because of how the fight turned out, and then she'll probably fight the winner of that fight, which I would expect Zhang Wei Li to win that fight.
And then, do you think Namajunas would fight the loser of that matchup that you were just mentioning with Zhang Wei Li?
Possibly, or there's always like a Jessica Andrade sitting out there. That's always an exciting matchup. I don't believe they've fought twice yet, have they? Maybe they have. But yeah, she's another one too. But yeah, that's kind of the carousel in that strawweight division right there, where we're gonna see them fight each other for the next couple months. So
yeah. And do you think you could see a rematch with Namajunas and Zhang Wei Li here soon, or is that going to be down the road? And I guess, could it even happen?
Yeah, I can see it happening. Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, maybe if Zhang Wei Li gets her next win or her fight, she has her next fight, wins, and then ends up fighting Namajunas, maybe in the winner of that takes on Esparza. I guess that'd be down the road. That'd be at least a year, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. So, did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
Yeah, one person I also wanted to mention was, I think that the next matchup for Rose is probably going to be Mariana Rodriguez. She's on a win streak, and she is ranked up there near the top. So she, I think, deserves a chance against Rose coming off a loss. And I think that's probably going to be the next matchup. So,
okay. Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. Now let's get to the main bout with Charles Oliveira and Gaethje. Now, that one had a lot of sparks in it, but it didn't last that long, and especially in the lightweight division. Again, as you mentioned, and I agree with this totally, where it's the most exciting, most exciting division in the UFC. It's been that way for a long time. But were you surprised with the way that fight ended, or were you surprised on anything, or were you surprised at all in the fight?
No, I wasn't surprised at how it went. I now have enough confidence in Charles Oliveira to say that yes, he is a Gaethje destroyer if he wants to be. It's Justin Gaethje has a weakness, right? And we all know what it is. He gives up on the choke, right? He taps out. And he can get better at that, but at the same time, I called a first round standing rear naked choke was my prediction, and it ended up going to the ground. But at this point, with the dominance of Charles Oliveira in the first round, I mean, he's literally coming right at you. And he told Justin Gaethje, I'm going to come right at you at this fight. So we knew we were going to see just hearing the fighters talk, we knew we were going to see fireworks in the first round. So I automatically gave it to Charles Oliveira because no matter who gets dropped, right? If Oliveira gets dropped, Gaethje's going to stand him right back up. Because that's what Oliveira does, right? If you knock him down, you're not going to go down to the mat with him. So in order to beat Charles Oliveira, you're going to have to put together a solid game plan to get rid of this guy. I mean, it's just scary at this point, man. And I think Justin Gaethje did a great job in striking with him. And I think that fight would have gone a lot longer if Justin Gaethje doesn't tap and he fights out of it. But and then again, Charles Oliveira, one of the best submission artists, has the most submissions in victories in the UFC. So it definitely turned out the way I thought. And it was sort of disappointing to see Justin Gaethje give up the same way again. But then again, fighters get better. They're both Justin Gaethje is still pretty young. So hopefully we can see these guys fight again.
And with Gaethje now, he's lost now 2 title fights, and both times it kind of happened the same way, where he was subbed by Nurmagomedov in 2020, and then basically almost 2 years later, he ends up getting the same thing with Oliveira. Do you think Gaethje gets another chance at a title fight, or is it going to be a long time, or do you think he doesn't get a chance at all?
I think it's going to be a little while before Gaethje gets a title fight. Typically, Dana White will, hold off when a fighter's lost that many in a row. But I was going to look up Rose Namajunas' coach, who's also, Trevor Whitman. So Trevor Whitman was actually 0-2 on the night, Justin Gaethje and Rose's coach. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But Trevor Whitman coming into those fights was considered one coach of the year before this, was voted UFC coach of the year before these fights, and then they lost both. So they're going to have to do some reevaluation. I mean, he's going to have to take a different approach with Justin Gaethje from now on, knowing that is his weakness. So we'll see what Trevor Whitman does if Justin Gaethje continues to fight with Trevor Whitman, or if Rose decides to keep him around. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
And let's go back to Oliveira. So we all know he's a great fighter. He's definitely probably going to, when it's all said and done, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? Where would you rank him in the top lightweights of all time? Because probably Nurmagomedov is number 1, right? But where do you put Oliveira in there? And probably McGregor somewhere in there. But where do you put Oliveira?
Gosh, I mean, he's definitely top 5. I have him, if he ends up fighting Makhachev and beats Makhachev, we can talk about him being up there with Khabib, because I believe that part of the reason Khabib left and retired is because of the prominence of Makhachev. Just a small reason, but I think Makhachev is very similar to Khabib. But if he can beat Makhachev, I think we're talking about one of the, if not the greatest of all time.
Well, didn't Nurmagomedov train Makhachev for a little bit there?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. They're very close. I don't think they work together as much anymore because of Khabib's retirement. But yeah, definitely. I think that he's like you said before, I think Makhachev has the potential to be the next Khabib, quote unquote. So, if those two fight, I think that'll be an indicator that if Charles Oliveira can beat Makhachev decisively, if he can finish the job, I don't want to see it go to decision. If he can finish Makhachev, we're talking about potentially the greatest of all time.
And do you think Khabib's going to come out of, you don't think Khabib's coming out of retirement now with him getting enshrined to the Hall of Fame? Because there was a lot of talk where, Oliveira should fight Nurmagomedov, but it's almost been 2 years since he retired. So you don't think he's going to come out of retirement, do you?
It's hard telling with Khabib, with his father passing and everything. That's, it's hard telling how long someone takes to kind of get over that, or if that was his final decision. But right now he's gained a lot of weight, so it's going to be a little bit at least. You've seen the chubby version of him walking around. So, I think he'll get back in the octagon at some point. I don't think he's going to completely be retired. I think at some point he's going to feel the need to get back in there again. I just don't think it's going to be now.
It's interesting too, because almost like everybody on Twitter, at least on social media, was saying after he knocked out or after he subbed Gaethje, where, oh, he's coming back, right? But you just got enshrined to the Hall of Fame, and like it's almost been 2 years. So, and plus, I think he's kind of a busy guy, right? I think he's the president of or not a UFC, but he's the president of some type of MMA league. So I can't really see him coming out of retirement. He seems like he likes retirement. So.
Yeah, he's starting his own league. He has some interesting fighters in that league too. It's kind of it's developing, we'll say that. But if you ever have a chance, check out Khabib's MMA league. It's kind of entertaining.
Yeah. All right, so let's start. Let's go back with actually let's continue talking about Oliveira. So before the weight he missed, or before the fight he missed weight. We were talking about it before we were starting recording. You said that you didn't agree with that. I mean, it's half a pound. He was half a pound short. Do you think there was a shot, or do you think there was a chance where their scale wasn't working, or do you think he just simply missed the weight?
I legitimately think that the scale wasn't working. I mean, I think it was close to 14 to 15 of the fighters weighed a half a pound over their weight that they had previously weighed in on the test scale beforehand. So there was talks about the scale being off. However, the weird thing is that Charles Oliveira came in the first time after weighing on the test scale, went in and weighed up a half pound over, then had a whole hour to go and get rid of that half pound and came back weighing exactly the same. So it's hard telling exactly what happened, but it's just a shame that, if it wasn't a championship fight, then he wouldn't have vacated his purse, at least, because that's allowed. You can have a half a pound over in a non-championship bout. But I think I think it just has to do with the gaming commission in, where was it? Las Vegas? No, wherever it was, they screwed up, and they're probably going to have a lawsuit on their hands because Charles Oliveira was stripped of his belt. And I'm 100% sure he has an attorney looking at an investigation, trying to figure out what happened, because, if that happens, you can lose money as a fighter, your reputation, stuff like that. I mean, that's all defamatory. So if I think it was the Arizona State Commission, if I'm correct, they're going to get sued. So that's my thoughts on that. I hope Charles Oliveira wins, because he shouldn't have been stripped of his belt, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I never really saw something like that, but I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of I'm not exactly a fan of the rule being half a pound out or half a pound, underweight or whatever, and having your belt vacated, but it'll be interesting. I think everybody knows that he is the best fighter in that division. We were talking about Poirier earlier. Do you think Poirier should fight Gaethje, or as you mentioned, that he should fight Gaethje? I believe he should get another title fight or title bout with Oliveira. What do you think exactly with the next few fights in the lightweight division?
I would like to see Gaethje get through Poirier before he takes on Oliveira again. It's just the fact that, I mean, Justin Gaethje has to prove himself again before he takes on Oliveira. I also think that Dustin Poirier, coming off his last fight, could use some redemption, and Justin Gaethje would be the perfect person. I just think that fight's going to happen. We'll see what happens, but I definitely think that Charles Oliveira, it's going to be tough to match people up with him from here on out. You're going to have to really try, or else, the odds are going to be swayed. You're going to have to find great opponents for him. Makhachev, like I said, probably next up. So.
All right, so now that we've talked about kind of UFC 274 and everything, let's start talking about the rankings. You kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it. What weight class really interests you with the rankings or rankings wise?
I really wanted to look at the light heavyweight rankings with Glover Teixeira being champion and that matchup with him coming up against Yuri Prohaska. After that, the winner of that will probably fight the winner of Muhammad Ankalaev and Rakic, because Rakic is coming off a loss. He was currently ranked number 3. Ankalaev is currently ranked number 4. He just jumped way up. So I see a matchup between Rakic and Ankalaev for the number 3 spot. And then we'll see what happens between was it Yuri Prohaska and Glover Teixeira.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think Glover Teixeira has a good chance to win that fight, actually, with his grappling. So it's going to be interesting. If Teixeira wins against Yuri Prohaska, we could possibly see, a rematch between Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira again, now that Jan's won. I mean, it could go any way, but it's going to be really interesting. I think we should keep an eye on the light heavyweight rankings, because, I mean, you even have Paul Craig is coming off of a win. Jamahal Hill's coming off of a win. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. So, yeah, the light heavyweight rankings are going to be mixing it up here soon.
And is there any another weight class you want to talk about? Maybe, well, I guess, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, welterweight.
Yeah.
Colby Covington, Leon Edwards, Kazmat Chimaev, Gilbert Burns, Bilal Muhammad. That's going to be very interesting. You also have Vicente Luque coming in at number 6. And, after that, it's Stephen Thompson, Jorge Masvidal, Sean Brady, and Neil Magny. So there's going to be sort of a carousel going on there again, but I'd like to see Bilal Muhammad. I believe he has another fight coming up here soon, but and Kazmat Chimaev as well. I would love to see a matchup between Kazmat Chimaev and Kamaru Usman. That would be amazing.
It seems like, though, no one's going to beat Usman unless something really happens drastic. I mean, he's fought Colby Covington. We all know he's fought Gilbert Burns. I think he's fought Leon Edwards, correct? Or on that?
In the past, I think he has. We'll have to check on that. But I was just going to say that, Leon Edwards might actually be a decent matchup issue for Kamaru Usman, considering how long he is, and considering Kamaru Usman doesn't generally like to shoot anymore very much, and he likes to keep it on the feet now that he's improved his jab and stuff like that. I mean, he knocked Colby Covington out with a jab, so I think it would be it'd be a nice matchup there. Also, Bilal Muhammad versus Kamaru Usman. Bilal Muhammad's grappling is a lot better than people think it is, and I think just anyone against Kamaru Usman right now is just a juicy fight, because it's hard telling how you're going to beat the guy. He's so strong. He's like a bowling ball in there. So, Kazmat versus Usman. I'd like to see Bilal Muhammad get a chance too. Like I said, even Vicente Luque is someone that could, I believe, if he could go in there and fight Usman and get lucky and catch him and knock him out, because he has that power. But, it's going to be interesting. I think at some point, Kamaru Usman is going to get dethroned by someone like the likes of Muhammad or Chimaev, someone else that can grapple and out grapple Usman and stay away from him on the feet just like that. So, I mean, that prototype alone, I think, is what's going to be able to take out Kamaru. But for the time being, he is the champion, and he's, he'll be there for a minute. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we haven't heard Jorge Masvidal in a long time. What about him? Because I know he's fought Usman twice. Both times he got beat. But what's next for Jorge Masvidal?
I'd like to actually see him fight Michael Chiesa because of the matchup. Him being a brawler and Chiesa being a grappler, I'd like to see what happens there. Because, if Chiesa takes it to the mat, Jorge's in trouble. But if Jorge connects with Chiesa on the feet, he's in trouble. So I think that would be a great fight to watch. Plus, I'd like to see Michael Chiesa, go against someone that's actually not going to guarantee beat him. So, I'd like to see him fight someone of more his caliber. So I think that'd be a good fight to make. Even, Stephen Thompson versus Jorge Masvidal might be a good one. You see if he can close the gap on Stephen Thompson. But, Jorge Masvidal has got to figure it out. He's running around the street assaulting people. So he's got to figure it out if he's going to fight again in the UFC. So he's got some making up to do, but we'll see on that. Yeah, and I do feel for Colby Covington on that too, because I think he did chip a tooth on that. So who knows? Who knows what will happen? It'll be fun to watch though. The one question I have is, what's Colby Covington going to do now after that? Could it be against Gilbert Burns? That could be a possibility. So we'll see.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, because I feel like Colby Covington, outside of, Usman, he's number one, really. I mean, that's basically what the rankings show as well. So we'll see what happens there, but it's good. Yeah, as you said, it's going to be interesting these next few months, what happens outside of Usman in that welterweight ranking. So on that note, let's transition over to UFC 275. Not a huge card compared to UFC 276. We'll end on that one, but let's start off with the main bout with Glover Teixeira. I think this is his first title defense. Do you think he can defend it, or do you think there's an upset going to happen here?
I think there's a good chance he could defend it. It's going to be one of my favorite fights of the year, because Jiří Procházka is one of the most exciting fighters to watch, and that it's going to be a fun fight just for the fact that Jiří Procházka is so unorthodox that it's going to be interesting to see how Glover Teixeira handles that, because Glover Teixeira is very, very technical, and it's like I said, it's going to be a technical fighter versus a freestyle fighter. So normally in those matchups, the technical fighter will win unless the other fighter knocks him out, right? Or else it's going to go to the ground. So I'm leaning towards Glover Teixeira in that matchup. As much as I don't want to see that happen, I'd like to see Jiří Procházka win. So I think in that fight, you're either going to see a late round stoppage with Glover Teixeira choking Procházka out, or you're going to see a first or second round TKO by Procházka. Either way, it's going to be fireworks.
Yeah, especially with the light heavyweight bout. Let's talk about the co-main event with Valentina Shevchenko. I think she's going to be the heavy favorite in this one. I mean, do you think she gets upset here, or do you think she handles her business like normal?
I think Shevchenko is gonna easily win this fight. I like Taila Santos. I like how she's improved her striking. I just don't think it's going to be enough for Shevchenko in the full package that she has. Taila Santos is more or less 1 to 2 dimensional when it comes to how she fights. So I think Shevchenko is going to find a lot of openings against her. And honestly, at this point, it's just who we're going to throw at Shevchenko. It's like throwing him to the wolves at this point. But I just don't think she has a chance against Shevchenko. I think it'll be a fun fight just to see how good Shevchenko fights. So,
do you think Shevchenko gets the knockout on Santos, or do you think it actually goes the distance?
Oh man, I'm gonna say she gets a stoppage. I'm gonna say she gets a stoppage. I don't know how she's gonna do it, but I just see Taila Santos not being able to take it from Valentina Shevchenko. That's my prediction.
All right, so let's talk about our last thing of UFC 275 before we jump on to UFC 276, which is just a stacked card. We got Weili Zhang. We talked about her a little bit. What happens in this matchup? And I mean, do you think Zhang can get the knockout or the submission, or how do you think this fight will last and will end?
I think it's going to go the distance, and I think it's also going to come down to grappling, because that's Joanna's technical weakness against Zhang. Like I said, a lot of these fights where it ends up on the ground, in these, especially the straw weight fights, with Zhang being so strong down on the ground. I mean, it could go either way, but I just see Zhang being able to out grapple and being a lot stronger than Joanna. Joanna's going to obviously probably come out in the first round winning in strikes, but eventually, like we saw her against Namajunas, eventually she's going to lose composure and probably break down against Zhang. I see just a fast start from Jędrzejczyk and then slowly breaking down against Zhang because she's so powerful.
All right, so let's talk about the UFC 276, which again, this card is just stacked looking over it right now. I mean, even guys like Uriah Hall's in this fight. You have Sean O'Malley, Miesha Tate's coming back. Then you have the co-main bout. You have the trilogy between Volkanovski and Holloway. And then, of course, you have Israel Adesanya, which I think is number 2 in the pound-for-pound rankings in the UFC. So let's just start off with Uriah Hall. What do you see in this matchup, and how do you think it ends? Or how do you think it ends?
I think Andre Muniz is going to beat Uriah Hall. He's more of an up and comer. Uriah Hall is ranked above Muniz, but I see this as a setup fight. I mean, Uriah Hall he's dropped off a lot over the years. I'm surprised he's still ranked at 9, but he does pull out these wins every so often. I just think Muniz is too strong of a competitor. I don't think Hall has that many rounds left in him, to be honest. So, I mean, if you're a betting person, drop $5 on Uriah Hall for the knockout. But other than that, I see Andre Muniz dominating here.
All right, so let's move on to the next matchup in the bantamweight division. You got Sean O'Malley, of course, one of the more exciting fighters in the UFC, taking on Pedro Munoz here. I mean, do you think Malley gets the win here? We haven't seen O'Malley in a while. How do you think this fight will end up?
Oh, I think O'Malley gets the win easily. Pedro Munoz, he's going to have that reach disadvantage, and he's not like a who's the fighter that hurt O'Malley and then knocked him out on the ground, Chito Vera. He's not a Chito Vera, he's not going to be able to lock you down and take those punches like that. So Pedro Munoz is going to have to find his way around the kicks and the jabs of O'Malley, and I just don't think it's going to happen. I see a first or second round knockout by O'Malley.
All right, so let's go into the flyweight division here. And the women's side, we have Miesha Tate coming back. This one looks pretty exciting. She's a former champion, of course, taking on Lauren Murphy. Do you think Miesha Tate comes back and gets the win, or do you think Lauren Murphy, wins it here? Because Miesha Tate is coming back. She hasn't fought in a long time. So, I mean, how could you see this fight end up going? And I mean, who do you think gets the win here?
It's tough. I haven't had too much time to think about it, but Lauren Murphy, seasoned veteran, Miesha Tate, seasoned veteran. Lauren Murphy has been a lot more active lately than Miesha Tate, like you said, and Miesha Tate did have recently come back and have a strong performance. Lauren Murphy's going to have the advantage in this fight in the first couple of rounds, but then again, Miesha Tate, second, third round, she really puts on the Jets. And I think she still has it in her. So I can see Miesha Tate winning with a late round stoppage or by decision. I think Lauren Murphy, I think the odds will come out in favor of Lauren Murphy though. But I think Miesha Tate will win the fight.
All right, very interesting. Let's go into the next, I guess, the tri-main event, which is really a thing, but Sean Strickland taking on Alex Pereira. I mean, this fight doesn't exactly draw a lot of interest like the other ones, but I mean, what do you think about this matchup?
It should draw the interest of a lot of people, and it's not, because of the names. And here's the facts. Sean Strickland is on a tear. All the opponents that he's faced recently, he was completely destroyed. I believe, didn't he just beat Leon Edwards or someone like that? Yeah, he just destroyed someone. Alex Pereira has been on a win streak. I mean, this is the perfect matchup. It's two guys who literally just want to, it's going to be a street fight out there. I mean, Sean Strickland is, again, he's very technical, and so is Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is a little better with his kicks. So, but Sean Strickland, the amount of boxing volume that he puts on you and the pace that he puts on you could end up being too much for Alex Pereira. I honestly can't tell you how this fight's going to end, JJ. Like I said, it's one of these fights that is going under the radar. It's going to be an insane fight because of the volume, because of the pace that both these guys put on. If I was to take a guess at who wins this fight, I'm going to say Alex Pereira, solely based on size alone and reach. But then again, the boxing volume of Strickland. But yeah, I know that Pereira is probably going to be coming out as the favorite in this fight, but I can see a Sean Strickland late round upset as well. So if you want to see a good fight, tune in. Don't sleep on this fight. Don't sleep on this fight at all.
All right. So I'll talk about the other one, the co-main event. I'm kind of surprised this is a co-main event. This is how stacked this card is, with Alexander Volkanovski taking on Max Holloway, the trilogy. Now, the last time they fought, wasn't sure I agreed with it. I guess it's been almost 2 years now, the last time they fought. But, I mean, this is probably Volkanovski's really last fight in the featherweight division, because there was rumors that he wants to move up and get a chance to fight in the lightweight division, which would be interesting. But, I mean, let's just start off here. Do you think this will last 5 rounds, or do you think they'll be end in a knockout?
It could go 5, or it's going to go a couple rounds, right? It's going to go over 3 rounds, I think. Here's the thing. Volkanovski is an absolute animal, and he just walks through shots. I mean, he walked through all those Ortega shots. He was in one of the tightest guillotines I can possibly imagine, and he worked his way out of that. He said he was seeing the lights go out. So the heart of this guy is just insane. At this point, I think it's a lot more heart than Holloway has, even though Holloway is known for having a lot of heart in his fights. He is an older guy. Volkanovski is a little bit younger than Holloway. The only way Max wins this fight is by volume and by decision, I think.
Now, the last time they fought, what did you think about that? Did you think the judges got it right, or do you think Holloway should have won it? Or, I mean, what did you think about the last time they fought?
I think it could have gone either way. I think that Max Holloway probably won on significant strikes, but Volkanovski had a little bit more octagon control time. I think it all comes down to, you got to do a little bit more to beat the champion. So I think, Max Holloway is going to have, if he wants to get this done, he's going to have to come in here and do more than he did last time. That's for sure.
All right, last question with Volkanovski and Holloway. Do you think it's a more interesting fight than the main bout, or do you think with Israel Adesanya it's always going to be interesting? And would you rather watch that fight if you had a choice, which of course you're going to choose both, but what's a more interesting fight as of now?
I definitely think the Volkanovski and Holloway fight's going to be more interesting. I don't really understand the matchup here between Adesanya and Cannonier. I know Cannonier is number 2, and it's almost like the only one you can really throw at Adesanya at this point in that division right now. I just think Adesanya is going to tear Cannonier up on the outside. I mean, Cannonier, he's good, he's fast, he's got a quick jab, but he doesn't move like Adesanya, and he's a little bit one-dimensional. I mean, I don't even think Cannonier could control Adesanya on the ground, to be honest. So I don't think it's going to be a very exciting fight. I think Adesanya is probably going to get a knockout.
Where do you rank Adesanya among the top fighters in the UFC now? And actually, he's definitely a Hall of Famer. We all know that. But do you think he's one of the best middleweight fighters of all time in the UFC?
I'm going to have to give him a yeah. I'm going to have to give him a yes, just because of what he's done at his age.
Yeah.
Nobody can really take that away from him. And he only continues to grow. So yeah, what he's done so far, I would definitely say that. He only had, the sky's the limit for Adesanya. Yeah, I think that eventually I'd like to see a rematch between him and Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah. I mean, the last time they fought, it was great. It was just, Blachowicz had the advantage for the whole time because he was just, bigger. And I think that was Adesanya's first time he was fighting the light heavyweight division. So it was still really great to see Adesanya go the distance with, at the time, was the light heavyweight champion. So as you mentioned, you think Adesanya is going to win, going to pretty much have an easy decision here. I mean,
I think he's going to knock Cannonier out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And
I think he's due for a big knockout.
What's next for Adesanya, though? I mean, you mentioned it's going to be hard for anybody to fight him, but do you think he should move back up on the division, or just kind of wait for a top fighter in the middleweight division?
God, it's tough. He just fought Rob. He's going to fight Cannonier. He just fought Vettori. Brunson's. Nobody wants to make that fight. I mean, let's see what Sean Strickland does here against Pereira, because I think if Pereira beats Sean Strickland, he could jump the rankings up there, and I'd love to see a matchup between Adesanya and Pereira. I think it's a good. I think they match up statistically and stylistically very well. So I'd love to see that matchup. If they can make that happen, great.
Yeah. And before we end the interview, and again, thanks for coming on, Kyle. We can't, when you mention the UFC, you have to talk about a few people always, even if they're not really necessarily the conversation. You talk about Conor McGregor, you talk about Khabib, and on the women's side, you always have to mention, Amanda Nunes, right? Do you think her next matchup is going to be a rematch with Juliana Pena?
Yes, I think it is. I think that's going to be the next matchup. I just don't think there's really anybody else. And I think that the way that fight ended, I think there's too many questions up in the air. So I think that's definitely going to be the next matchup. I at this point, I think Dana White really can tell Nunes what to do because she lost. You know what I mean? Like, well, you put on an embarrassing performance in there. considering what you normally do. I think that Dana White's probably going to be able to get her into a rematch with Pena. So I definitely think you're right on that. I haven't really thought about any other matchups. I think that's probably the one to make.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think it might be a little down the road here, but, it's been a few months since they both fought. So, all right, again, thanks for coming on, Kyle. Is there anything else you want to add before we end the interview?
Follow the Sports Town podcast. Listen to JJ every day.
All right, again, thanks for coming on, Kyle. Have a great day and enjoy the next 2 UFC events. So
appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.